I want to welcome our panelists up here if we can. I'm glad, I think the success of the culture of UBBA, Utility Broadband Alliance, is the collaboration that happens among all of us. And I think some of the success of seeing some empty chairs is because there's so much collaboration going on in the halls here as we're talking during the breaks. But I think it's great seeing that flourish. Just a quick minute of to me, of gratitude, the history of kind of why we're here and all the work that's gone into making this happen. You know, I started with Bobby, and we're incredibly lucky to have her leadership in driving this organization to where it is, but it's really taken a village of effort, starting with our board of directors. A lot of the founding members are represented there, and a lot of new members as well. Has just really tirelessly, as a volunteer role, you know, they all have day jobs, but have brought this together, and really very appreciative of them. And then the founding utilities themselves that have committed, been willing. Their leadership has given them the latitude to commit time, going back to the most important to me, Southern Company, Southern Link, in hosting the 2019 summit, the first one. I always like to talk about Southern as a crystal ball because we can, you know, see what they did in advance of all of us as having the foresight to have spectrum before the rest of us, and really share that with us. I just lost through all this effort. So thank you to the Southern team. And then importantly, all the other utilities that have already started on this journey. And you know, we've got, you saw the list up there before during the USL when LT showed it. It's incredible how many utilities have started, Xcel being a really important and really the largest footprint now moving forward. And then all the other utilities that are here following in their footsteps and learning, and the collaboration, really the purpose we set out for when we started collectively this Utility Broadband Alliance was exactly this. Very different than any other trade show. This isn't a trade show to me. This is an opportunity for us to get together as colleagues and be able to share our learnings, help each other, and grow collectively to build this nationwide network of utility networks for all the benefits to our constituents, to our customers, to our employees, to our shareholders, and beyond. So with that, let me dive into this. We're really honored to have really a fantastic executive cross-section of our host utility, Xcel Energy. Xcel, as everyone knows, around the globe is a market leader in so many things, starting with you know, their commitment to decarbonization, really the pioneer stepping forward early before most utilities and setting the trend as they are now with private LTE. Being able to drive innovation, having the foresight to be able to, across really complicated territories, 8 states, drive a collective thinking. As we got to know and work with the team and see the way they worked across the organization, the thoroughness of decision making, it's really been a pleasure. And you know, we're, as your CEO reminded me when I ran into him at EEI, we're partners for 30 years per our agreement. So we're looking forward to a long-standing relationship. So let me dive right into the introductions of the folks we have here. In my first year to the left, I have what I would think of as a world-class operator, Tim O'Connor. Tim is the EVP and COO at Xcel Energy, where he oversees generation, transmission, distribution, natural gas operations, as well as enterprise supply chain and commercial operations. He's coming with over 40 years of commercial nuclear experience, where he was chief nuclear officer prior. Tawnya Fielder. Tanya's vice president of application delivery at Xcel Energy, and we're going to talk about what that means because it's a fascinating area. She's led technology efforts to deliver smart meters and new visibility into energy grid visibility, among other solutions benefiting all of Xcel Energy customers. Tawnya comes with a really deep customer-focused background, 23 years at Target. And you talk about an organization that understands and benefits from knowing their customers better than their competitors. And last but not least, Eric Levin. Eric is Xcel Energy's AVP and chief architect. He's distinguished as being a strategic digital experience creator with a passion for innovative technology systems that drive smart growth. And I'll put him on the spot a little bit. He's one of the new folks that joins into the energy revolution, right? Bringing people with outside experiences. He's had a lot of digital experience in other areas, chose to come into utility and really helping drive innovation. And we're going to talk about that some more as well. So with that, let's dive into some good questions here for the panel. don't know.
Is it on?
There we go. Mic's all working? Excellent. All right, we're going to make this as interactive as we can and conversational. So the first thing, let's kind of, in a speed round of sorts, when I say 10 words or less, what are the key issues you're facing, from your respective roles that you see within the organization?
Can I use 11 words?
12 if you'd like. 12.
I wrote them down. Energy demand, generation supply, policy, pace, affordability, technology, customer, decarbonizing, reliability, supply chain, which includes labor, and wildfire. That's what keeps me up every night.
That's a long list, and a lot of things we can unpack. Tawnya?
Sure. I didn't write them down like Tim did, but for me, in my role, I'm in technology services, and I lead all of our application delivery for all of our customer solutions and all of our OT operation solutions. And for me, digitization and how are we going to apply technology to all the challenges that Tim just described. And when I think about that, honestly, there's two really big things that come to mind that are challenges for us. One is new technology. How are we going to use all this new technology? How do we figure out what is forward-looking? How do we future-proof it? An environment that's regulated. And then also, this is big change for a utility, right? And we have a lot of change going on. And how do we be ready as a company, every single business area? So the digitization and then the change are really, in my mind, two of the biggest challenges that we have facing us.
I would just say yes and to both of those, but when I think about it, I think about the changing landscape of the grid and ultimately the impacts that that's going to have from a technology perspective. You've got resource changes, we've got to figure out the systems to change in and out, and ultimately how do we handle this dynamic environment that's kind of unfolding with things like DERs and just being able to handle very expansive growth very, very quickly. So those are things that are top of mind for me.
Great, thank you, panel. So Tim, we spoke a couple weeks ago, and I think you referenced some of the same things on your list. You detailed a lot of the new realities that Xcel Energy is facing. Things like where distributed and intermittent generation sources will be and how they need to be managed. Where EVs will be part of your energy demand and supply equation. The energy supply overall and sort of the changing nature of being not just a supplier but a manager of all sources of energy. How's Xcel thinking about driving toward this exciting yet challenging future while building out the infrastructure to support this all of these elements?
Great. So, for 100 years, the way the energy has typically been generated and supplied to customers, big units, central locations, wires go out, and we supply the demands. Kind of one way. Transmission kind of moved it back and forth a little bit between things, but the distribution side, straight out. And being an operator, and I am an operator, that's really what I am. I'm not a banker, I'm not a politician or that stuff. I'm into the real operations side of things. And in the past, operations was, my language, a little bit boring. Things stay on, the flows are taking place, loads go up and down a little bit, you use your units to kind of manipulate reactive load, pretty straightforward day. So when we said we're going to decarbonize and lead the clean energy transition, which is the company's position, we want to be 80% carbon free by 2030 and 100% by 2050. Even though I can't tell you exactly how I'll close the gap between 80 and 100. I know how to get to 80, 83, 84% today. I know how to do that. What's happening though is the system I just described is now changing radically. So this 24/7 firm capacity that we've been accustomed to now is being replaced with large amounts of energy, but intermittent. It's not 24/7. And it goes on and it goes off and it goes on and it goes off. And solar is another big piece that I've gotten the ability to have a little more working knowledge of. It's a really cool setup between 8 and 5. After that, it's a little tough. And I don't know about you all, but mostly demands aren't down at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They still go on till 7, 8, 9, and depending on where you're in the country, one of our jurisdictions, it's still running at 10 o'clock p.m. So you start to see a very different equation now of how do you provide reliability with a very different set of energy resources. That's problem number one that I see we're working with. Not problem, opportunity. We're getting good at it. I operate in 3 jurisdictions, 2 organized markets and 1 that I'm the actual balancing authority for. So I actually do the, buying, selling, and moving it back and forth to maintain reliability. And the one in Colorado, that's the one that I'm the balancing authority. I can tell you it is a very interesting challenge with this new energy flow, the dynamics of it. It used to be in the past is that you would see maybe a 500-600 megawatt swing maybe over the course of 8-9 hours. And if you lost a big unit, all right, it wasn't that often. Now, I can see a 3,000 megawatt swing in 15 minutes. That's really different. It takes a completely different kind of communication, a completely different type of connectivity in order to make sure that, Rob, your lights stay on and don't flicker. So this is the stuff that is right now. That's right now. And as we put more renewables on, everyone is going to see this as the coal plants drop off. There's going to be a higher dependency on gas. But as policies are moving across the different states and this decarbonizing, coal was the first thing to disappear. Now there's a lot of pressure on natural gas. Well, I don't think the system is quite ready yet for all renewables. But it isn't my decision. I mean, I'm supposed to guarantee reliability. Policy establishes what energies I can supply and what I can't. I mean, that's the way a regulated utility works. So I have to figure out how to make these things work, even though the engineer side of me says, I don't know how to do that yet. Now, what this also says is the grid now changes. It's not just enough that the energy changes, what the grid does, how it's controlled, how we communicate inside of it, including the distribution system. Because now I see is energy going, it's one grid. It's not, transmission has always been the grid. Now it's going to be all the wires are the grid. That's a very different kind of mindset when you look at charging. Is charging just going to be a one-way energy, meaning it's just a load? Or do you think that policymakers will expect me, they'll make this, say this to me, they'll say, well, Tim, there's going to be 10 million cars in Denver. So, EVs, so why don't you just use that storage capacity and manage the grid? You don't need any more other energy, just use that. And I go, oh, okay, interesting. So these are the challenges now that we start to see, which starts to change what is the vision of the system we're looking at? What is our anticipated direction? Decarbonizing means you're not only going to change the kind of energy you produce to make electricity, it's going to be decarbonizing other sectors. Of course, the transportation side is going to become the next place. I mean, it's right now, the energy system is probably not the largest carbon emitter. It's actually the transportation sector. So that's going to be the place that I expect it to take a larger direction. It's also great for you and I as utility people is, well, of course I want more electricity. I mean, that's what I'm in for. So it's a good thing. So those are the things that I see, Rob, that are in front of us. It's exciting times. It's a massive amount of growth opportunity. It's a massive amount of new, creative, innovative thinking. We ask what draws in the younger generation. It's this kind of stuff that does, because we're talking about new technologies, which they love. They don't like the old, meters on a panel that has the cable making the needle go back and forth. Now that tells you how old I am. They want to see everything digital. They want to see that kind of stuff. That's what they work with. So I think great growth opportunity, great place to engage younger generations, and honestly, I think we're doing a great service for our communities by decarbonizing.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. And really, having talked to a lot of your leadership about, you're driving that on so many levels. Even battery storage. I met with one of the companies that you're innovating on. Can you talk for a minute about the battery storage? I know that that's also an emerging technology that you're trying to figure out how to rely upon. Still not yet.
So, how many kinds of batteries are out there right now? Anybody know? 2 that I can think of. It's lithium ion. I'm not talking about Duracell. Not talking about that, right? Not talking about that, no. Talking about lithium ion, and there's one that's the emerging technology Rob's referring to. It's from a company called Form Energy, and it's basically a iron oxide methodology. And think of it this way: take a piece of steel, let it rust, you put it into this. Now, of course, I'm really simplifying. You put it in this solution, you create an ion bath, and you get a potential out of it, and poof, out comes a potential. Pretty cool. So you rust a piece of steel, and then you reverse the process, and you recharge the battery, so to speak. This battery, interesting, or this storage methodology, has a 100-hour capability at full capacity. Lithium ion is around 4 hours, give or take a little bit. Now, 4 hours in a grid, that's nothing. I mean, I wouldn't waste my time. It's too much money for what you get out of it. Now, 100 hours, now I can say, well, that could handle a Uri event, or some of these others where wind maybe isn't running, for a day or two, or the clouds are out, and so there's less solar. You start to say, well, that's a pretty interesting system. So we're putting 2 10-megawatt batteries out there in our system to begin that technology and actually learn how to use that, and I expect it will grow in our portfolio. And so we're working with Form Energy, and the Department of Energy gave us grants to accelerate that technology.
Yeah, great example of the federal funding and with innovative thinkers, how it's driving a changing landscape, but really those missing pieces, as you talked about, as we get into our decarbonization objectives. All right, I'm going to, Tawnya, skip you for a second.
I told you I could go all day.
I know, and we will. We'll be in the hall afterwards, going the rest of the day. Eric, so as chief architect, right? It's a big responsibility from a title and an execution standpoint, and coming in with an outside perspective, you bring some fresh view. In what Tim went through, how do you tie back, give us a sense of the evolution you think is necessary from a systems and a technology standpoint to support this new utility reality?
Well, I think you guys all heard. I mean, Tim said there's pretty much not a changing landscape, so don't need to even be worried about this. Now, when you think about even just the comment of the EVs in Colorado, right? So think about 10 million EVs. Historically, we've had huge generators that we run fiber to and are able to communicate with resilience, and there's a big effort to actually have strong communication for our control points for any generation, any distribution, any transmission, right? So our substations, we're running communication to those. It's a very different dynamic when you start to say, okay, well, we can't run communication to all of the places we potentially can get energy from. 10 million different cars, right? Just economies of scale wise, we cannot do that. So it requires you to change your mindset of how do we have reliable communication with these distributed energy resources where we need to be able to control those to create stability on the grid, but ultimately have to do it in a way that scales, right? So, from my perspective, there's just this foundational piece that you need from a connectivity communication perspective that requires resilience, everything we look at in terms of operational excellence, and we need to make sure that foundation is strong. Then on top of that, you start to build different dynamics into, like, one of the architectural tenets that we're driving within Xcel is universally deployable compute. When you start to think about how we're controlling the grid, historically that's been centralized within Xcel data centers, and then we're using SCADA to control out into the grid. We're going to need to be able to move some of that compute and control out into the, essentially the grid itself. Right? And that's going to create a very different mindset. And that's when I talk about resources. When we've got solutioning happening around this, it requires people that have a different mindset than we've historically had within a utility company. And quite frankly, just from my perspective, I joke about this, but when I started at Xcel, I was not interested in joining a utility company because of what Tim just talked about. But you start to hear about all the different innovation and these intellectually stimulating things of handling things at scale when you're talking 10 million different EVs and being able to actually control those, and how do you have the right security measures and how do you protect the grid. There's a lot that goes into that, right? So those are kind of the things that I think about when I start to think about how to execute on that vision.
That's great, thank you. Since you both made reference to the sort of attracting new talent, younger generations, and I think it's such a valuable thing that we all think about as we're hiring. My first person example, my oldest son, who's graduated from college, he does everything that I don't ask him to do. Right? If I were to say go into plastics, he'd go into metals. But he, on his own accord, and it is becoming, a popular thing to think about how we solve these big issues. As he's now working for a guidehouse, I don't think there's any guidehouse people here, but helping work for utilities, and because that's interesting, not because I suggested if I did again he wouldn't be doing it. So, Tim, I want to jump back to you for a minute on the iterating on what Eric is saying, but with these two-way power flows in the grid. The benefits potentially for utility and customers is great, but obviously, we're here talking about broadband communications and the necessity and the value that can bring in kind of, bridging the gap of control, awareness, security. What are your thoughts about kind of the communications role in this new reality?
One word: huge. And it's got to be fast. So if we're trying to deliver 99.99 reliability, regardless of the environmental condition, which, by the way, that's the standard. You can't say a storm happens anymore and the lights go out. Wrong answer. It's got to be, if a storm happens, if a tornado happens, if we get a cold snap, all these kinds of things, the expectation is this, the grid stays on because of the dependency society has of the electricity, which means we're going to have lots of devices out there that we got to talk to. We need to understand what's happening, and I don't have I'll call it the financial capability to send rolling trucks out on a routine basis and say, why is feeder XYZ a problem? I have to know instantaneously. So what I see happening, Rob, is, as Eric said, we're going to see a heck of a lot more of distributed energy being put on the system that I have to take into our, I'll call, portfolio of management. That in itself is going to have a tremendous amount of devices and communication expectations and controls to go back and forth so that, is it going to be there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or not? One. The second thing is, the system can't go down, so I have to know where the system is having issues. And it might sound, well, don't you have that? And we do, but not to the degree that's going to be necessary when I have the complexity of intermittent energy that I have, intermittent energy that comes, or storage that comes from the DERs. Now I have to have even a larger capability of information communication and management of that, probably I can't even think of how much data is going to be coming in, and it's got to be translated very quickly so that the person on the board can make the right decision about whatever is happening. I mean, it's just, to me, it starts to become overwhelming. I can't comprehend the amount of interactions and controls and the complexity now of the communication that's going to be required in order to make the system work, I'll call it harmoniously. I mean, I hope someone out here knows how to do that because that's what we're going to need. And it's going to come faster than I think we're giving ourselves credit for. I really think it's going to happen quicker. The demands are going to be out there. Policy is pushing it. And so they always say, are we on the knee of the curve? Are we on this? And I think we're going to quickly go into this fast demand, and it's going to be a huge expectation for us to deliver. And I don't see how we can do that without having twice probably the communication architecture that we have today. That's just my, I'll call it.
You're in the right room to be saying that for sure. I think we all agree with you tremendously. Clearly the evolution to a standardized technology. Yesterday there was a great panel talking about the globalized standard of 3GPP. That's our industry association, and 4G leading to 5G. And I was around in 1G. I guarantee we'll have a 6 and a 7G eventually. But it's not about the Gs. It's about what benefits it's bringing, what applications, what use cases. When I started 30 years ago in the wireless business, we were putting out cell phones to make phone calls, believe it or not. My kids don't make phone calls anymore. But, and adding text messaging was innovation. Now, what's driving it is applications, right? Well, we were talking yesterday about what will be the 5G application. We don't really know yet what's going to pull it through. 4G was video and broadband services. I think that's a perfect lead, and I saved the best for last year for Tawnya. Tawnya, as the customer-centric application deliverer, right, as I kind of think of you, which is an important role, and also with the vast experience of being in a customer-centric organization previously at Target. Tell me about kind of how you see the value, the benefit of bringing this kind of technology and the necessity, the needs for the benefit of customers and for the benefit of employees and other stakeholders.
Yeah. Having information in the hands of our employees and our customers is critical. All that Tim was talking about is critical and important to create flexibility to our customers, and that's what our customers want. So let me start with customers a little bit. It is so important for our customers to have choice in their energy. And when you just think about what Tim was talking about with, they have all these distributed energy options. They're going to have EVs. They want to have batteries in their homes. We want to give them choice and flexibility to be able to do all of that. And that's what our applications need to provide. We've been spending quite a bit of time working on EVs right now at Xcel. And I'll just even share my own personal story. My husband and I both, we now are a 2 EV family. And I'll share my own Xcel story, which is I bought a Tesla, and I purchased my Tesla, and I bought the Xcel Energy charger without speaking to a single person. And that was all through an application. It was a smooth customer experience. I went through the application and I actually applied for an Xcel Energy charger. I had it installed on my home, and I got put on an Xcel Energy service that allows me to save money on charging my home. And that's a great example of an application that customers are going to expect. They're going to expect choices and flexibility when it comes to their uses of energy. Another really good example, we're working on something called distributed intelligence. So when you think about it now, you have smart meters, right? You have computers on board those meters on your home. We're in the process of deploying millions of meters out into our customers' homes. And what's really exciting about having that computer on the meter is I can now give a ton of information to my customers. And our customers want to know what's happening in their energy. They want to know, what does it cost to run my refrigerator? What does it cost? Right now, I can't tell you how much it's costing me to charge my EV, because I don't really have that good information. But as we take information that's coming off of our meter, our smart meter, we bring that information together and we make it available to our customers. They will know how much it is cost to charge an EV, how much their every piece of equipment in their home. This is all about customer information and then customer choice. Because once you know information, you can make choices about your energy usage. You can swap out appliances. You can make a choice to have an EV car or not. So for us, customer is absolutely critical. It's the most important part of our business. I shouldn't say the most, but it is a very important part of our business, right? How do we serve our customers? And we want to use applications to serve them up information, help them to have more choice so they have more flexibility in their regulated utility environment.
That's fantastic. I hope everyone really hears that and thinks. We spend a lot of time in this forum talking about technologies, spectrum, devices, and really sometimes maybe lose focus on that customer piece, right? The benefits. It's incredible to be able to take challenges, right, as Tim laid out, and turning them into benefits and even economic benefits, right? Affordability benefits. If you can have a charger that can give you cheaper energy at the right time when you're charging that EV versus doing it at a peak time, that benefits the utility, benefits our environment, and clearly benefits the consumer at the end of the day. And that's really a great perspective. All right, Eric. Xcel, as I mentioned earlier, really took what I think of as a successful and rigorous approach to decision making through business cases, right? And what we see with a lot of utilities, that's a challenging thing to do, because typically, historically, things like wireless technologies were made within individual divisions, functional groups, not across organizations. We're seeing the rapid evolution of utilities in putting in innovation officers and folks who are thinking more broadly about the overall consumer benefit and consumer needs and the success of the organization. The business case that you guys did was thorough and had to cross the whole organization to be justified, right? It's a significant decision and investment to put in a private LTE system, to acquire the spectrum and be able to do what you do. Tell me about kind of how you view the making of a strong business case for digital transformation that you're leading and that will be enabled by connectivity.
Yeah, so really quick, what I do want to just comment on with Tanya's piece here is when you think about all those AMI meters, 3.5 million meters, right? That's 3.5 million grid computers that we're able to actually deploy compute to help control our grid. That requires a ton of communication, but it's very, very exciting in terms of what you think about from an engagement. This is where I get really excited, is the engagement it starts to allow you to drive with your customers. Think about, historically, there's been this notion of, well, I just get a bill and I pay my bill, and that's all my engagement is with the utility. But now all of a sudden, we're able to actually have a conversation powered by applications and technology running at the edge, where we're able to say, hey, you just turned on your EV, you might want to turn that off right now, right? It starts to become more of a partnership of how to use energy versus I'm just paying my bill, right? So I get really excited about that because I love more the consumer side of things. So I just had to add that. But going back to your whole notion of formulating a business case and how I think about pieces like private LTE and creating a business case around that, ultimately I'm trying to drive focus of how whether it's on the application side or whether it's on the infrastructure side, when you think about having point solutions, 200 different point solutions for ways you're connecting to be able to control our grid, right? There's a ton of OpEx cost that goes along with that, O&M cost that goes along with that, just in terms of maintenance. Some line goes down, all of a sudden you got to roll a truck, figure out what's going on. There's just all this cost, and you're also spreading your resources extremely thin because you've got one point solution here that one person knows about, and then a different point solution here that a different person knows about, and being able to actually have resources that give you more economies of scale in one standardized platform and how to do your communication, there's a huge benefit from that perspective. So we're able to do more of a capital investment in creating that asset around our communication infrastructure than we're able to do with the various point solutions. Does that help?
Very helpful.
I just add to that, there's something, they're underselling how good they are. The one thing that they didn't mention is the partnership you have to have with the business unit itself. If you're just trying to push a technical solution through as a technological solution, I think you're going to run into a buzzsaw. But if you can, because what Eric said and what Tawnya said was, how do you marry the solution with the other items the business unit is expected to fix? Meet the customer better. Well, in my world, the customer wants to know when it's on, when it's off, storms. I have to have a better methodology. Tawnya says, if you do this and this and this, you can reduce your costs. And I'm going, pretty cool. Eric says, you know, if you have this device and we're managing it on our system, you can reduce the number of trucks that you're sending, as he said. Great. So there's a partnership that you have to create, I think, in these business cases where it's a combined technology with, I'll call it the BU outcome in aggregate, is what sold this methodology that we're describing for the company. And I was in two seats. I was in the governance seat to say it's a good idea. I mean, I sit on the governance because it's a lot of money. But I was also in the seat of trying to find the business case to support doing it. So I just trying to emphasize the partnership that has to, take place. And there's a pulling factor that has to happen by the business unit. And that, to me, is what probably was a bigger win in our company than if Eric or Tawnya was just trying to say, here's a great thing. It comes better when some of my folks are pulling it and saying, we can't get there without this.
That's great. This is a fantastic conversation. I think we'll continue these themes throughout the conference and obviously beyond. For me, the important benefit that I want to bring us up to is the collective work that we do here at UBBA, and it's unique in this sector. For those of you who have joined the sector, those of you who are in it may not even realize how powerful it can be. One of the reasons we helped create UBBA was exactly for that, right? The founding principle of the idea of realizing the nationwide benefit of collective action. Tim, given the considerable multi-decade experience you have bringing the nuclear sector together in a challenging time with then a challenging technology now that clearly we rely on as a nation, what advice do you have to give this group as we're trying to now use the same basic principles of collaboration to bring together our thinking and work together on innovating around this private LTE and broadband wireless communications?
In the nuclear world, whatever happens at one facility automatically will happen at everybody else's. That's how tight the community is. And I don't think that's unique to the nuclear side. It's just one that I'm very familiar with. And I think the grid and the ties that we have across the nation are going to force all of us to work much closer than we ever have before, which means we have to have comfort in understanding best practices, exchanging lessons learned, because all that's doing is creating a continuous improvement engine, and you're reaching, I would call, is an excellence platform. And that's how nuclear survived. 10 years ago, there were a lot of problems. Fukushima and other things, and the nuclear industry was not looked at very favorably. And the only way that it could, I'll say, stay in the mix was that it had a perfection standard and that it could figure out how to do things more competitively because it ran at high standards of excellence. Not that high standards of excellence cost money, but that high standards of excellence actually is a less expensive way to operate, which turned out to be absolutely true. So why wouldn't we do that in other places? We're all trying to do the same thing. I mean, even though the nukes are in different, some are regulated, some are unregulated, some are, nobody lost their competitive edge simply because they exchanged best practices between each other. And I think the more we can do those types of things, probably the better everyone will be. There's nothing worse than something happens in some utility, it's overreacted to by whatever agency is, and now everybody has to do something as a result of it. And so I see it happening more and more, and I think those are the kinds of things that we should want to. I don't like living someone else's problems.
Tawnya and Eric, I don't know if you want to add thoughts to that. I mean, to me, the maybe from a perspective of, you're now leading building systems like this in 8 states and as the largest footprint of those utilities that have committed to step forward. You've got a lot of utilities in the room that haven't yet made that commitment but are trying to figure it out and figure out a way to join us in this significant effort in solving these problems. What are your thoughts?
I'll make a couple comments. What a unique industry to be in where we can share. I came from Target, 23 years there, and I'll tell you at Target, we do not go talk to Walmart and ask them what they're doing. And here, you can do something absolutely amazing, right? You can talk to your peer utilities, you can talk to a partner and tell us, what do you know about what all the peer utilities are doing? It's absolutely amazing and it's exciting. I think I'm going to tag on to something that you said at the very beginning, which is how do we entice the new generation to be a part of utilities? It's interesting because, I loved being at Target. It was a great experience, but it's just all about selling socks, right? I got to sell socks, more socks. But here in a utility, you are a part of a large vision. And when you think about it, when we got up this morning, how many of us used, well, we're here in Minneapolis, how many of us used our utility product, right? I got up, my cell phone went off, and my alarm went off. That was energy. I took a shower and I got cold water, that was energy. I used my electric toothbrush, that was energy. I made some coffee, that was energy. I used the hair dryer, which was energy, and then my curling iron. You just think about how many times I touch the product that we do and the product that we all collectively are about providing. That's an exciting place to be. That's an exciting industry to be in. And I think part of one thing that we can really do together is we can help people understand that. And we can create more excitement, more enthusiasm. We can motivate people to become a part of this industry, because I think the next generation needs to be motivated to be a part of this exciting area. And that's something I think we can really do together and motivate, next generations to be a part of this initiative.
I think it's powerful. I can't agree anymore. The last panel, they mentioned kind of the meaningful mission of what we're all doing, and only because we can do it collectively to solve these issues. Eric, please.
So, totally agree on the collaboration from an industry perspective. That's been immensely helpful, even for me joining the industry, just being able to understand from my peers what's going on at various utilities. And I can't say thank you enough for that, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot going on in this space. What I also get really excited about is the collaboration more actually with our customers. And I kind of mentioned this in terms of the AMI meters and kind of the engagement pieces, but coming from the outside of this space, energy was just kind of energy to me. I didn't really think about where it's coming from or how I'm getting it. It's like, when my lights go off, why are my lights off? I just want them back on, right? And I think we have the opportunity to start, because it's such a socially relevant topic now. You think about all the EVs coming out, you think about the clean energy initiatives, you think about all these different things that are impacting our industry as a whole. And there's a very relevant topic to start having with consumers about where their energy is coming from. How do we actually distribute that energy to them? That's going to be important in terms of distributed energy resources and making sure they understand, am I helping to supply the grid? Am I just keeping it for myself? There's a conversation that's going to start happening with the consumer base from an energy perspective, and I think that's going to be a really exciting thing too, because it's going to be helping us, or it's going to help us allow them to help. It's going to help in allowing them to understand a little bit more about how energy works and the whole dynamic of the grid, and make it much more relevant for them. Right? Does that make sense?
Complete sense. I think that's a great lesson for everybody here about the connectivity to the customer and the customer benefit and listening to the customer. So, Bobby, do you want us to open up for questions in our last 10 minutes? Okay, so anyone who has any questions, there's mic on both sides of the room. While you're doing it, I just want to, again, thank this group. Really, to be able to have a broad cross-section of understanding of what a leading utility is doing for the benefit of this group, which is unilaterally focused on driving private connectivity. Please, if you could just start with your name and company.
Sure. My name's Michael Tate from Great River Energy. Neighbors. Glad to talk to you guys. Recently, I've been watching a lot of disaster documentaries. And what I really kind of realized is it's not that there was poor planning or people were incompetent or anything like that, but it was, a lack of imagination about what could go wrong. And so I was wondering, like from the operations side and comm side, like, are there ways that you guys are trying to like figure out like the famous like unknown unknowns that exist, and how to maybe deal with them in the future?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Of course we do.
Next question.
That's what utility commissions expect us to do, is they expect us to think of the worst case scenarios. And, climate change, whether you're a believer or not, I can tell you climate is changing because I look at the data. Wind speeds average are higher now than they were 5 years ago. We see more, I'll call it storm activity, than we used to. We see things. So the expectation is that we have to practice and come up with what I'll call it the unbelievable scenario. In nuclear, I would tell you, we have to assume the aliens are coming. We got to be at that degree in order to assure that we don't have, a loss of any kind of control of radioactive material. And so that thinking is what our company is trying to apply in all of our business. That's why we call it operational excellence. It's not a phrase, it's a mindset of how do you deliver at all times, which means you have to start thinking about what are the things that could go wrong. And in many cases, I would say it might be 2 or 3 defense mechanisms that fail that you have to assume when you start looking at protective and response measures. We practice that. Believe it or not, we practice that on a quarterly basis in our company so that I'd say we don't get caught flat-footed. Now, I will tell you, with some of our scenarios, we come up with, oh boy, that was a good one. We have to do some hardening. Now, we have to get approval. It may be a capital job. It may require us to go through the state, and we have to tell them that this scenario is more likely than we thought, and we need to do some sort of, I'll call it hardening. In the language I come from, that's what I would say resilience is. Resilience in the electric business is about having a system that, regardless of what happens, it stays on, and if it does go down, it comes back very quickly. So those are the things that I would say for operationally, are part of my, I would call it, expectation with the organizations and our commitment back to the Utilities Commission and our customers.
Can I add just a little commentary to what Tim's saying, which is my experience at Xcel is that we take this very, very seriously. And when Tim talks about the practice exercises, he's not saying, oh, he's delegated that to somebody in the team. Literally, that we have practice exercises every quarter that Tim and the executive team are on. There is a huge focus, of course, on safety and resiliency by our company, and I would say it's embedded in our culture that this is a top priority for us to make sure we can figure out how are we going to respond if something happens, because probably something unknown is going to happen, right? And what practices, processes do we have in place when we hit that unknown situation? I think it's a really important part of the culture of our company that there's a very strong investment from the top down to everyone in the company. So just adding on to what Tim said.
Thank you. We've got another question.
Yeah, Corey McGuire with WWT. Tim, it was interesting when you were introduced. You said you've been in the industry about 40 years, and it just reminded me really quickly, and I'm 3 years from that mark, so it was kind of sobering. But all that said and done, I only mention that because that means we've seen a lot in this industry. And I thought one of the most innovative things that happened from in the industry was your resiliency as a service program. And I had a chance to work alongside the team at Xcel at a point in that, and I wanted to know, one, is that somewhat of a North Star program or business decision for Xcel? And if it is, did it drive your communication strategy? Because I've seen the list of targeted clients between Wisconsin and Colorado, and that's a lot of disparate customers. And I want to know if that drove your communication strategy when you're doing your fan and your implementation and your technology. So it's two questions there. One, is it a North Star? And two, how did it drive your communication strategy?
Can you say which program again? You said that we had a little hard time hearing the program.
Resiliency as a service.
Of the service?
Resiliency as a service.
Oh, resiliency as a service.
Yeah.
I'll take a first start at it. Do you think there's a difference between reliability and resilience? Are they the same words or are they different?
For me, it's a little different.
It is to me too. There was a few years ago, I think, where probably from some of the events that came across in the industry with whether it be on the gas side or the electric side, whether it be storms or others, this notion of, is reliability just 99.9 when it's sunny, or is it all the time regardless? And that started changing language about resiliency. What does that mean? Anybody know how many lines are above ground? A lot. So wind outside, branches outside, hits a wire, wire goes down. Now the other next thing is we don't want to fire. So we start looking at what would be the resilient way of running that wire. It would be undergrounded. Take it out of the equation. So there's been a move of thought by many, EEI and us along with other utilities, is there's a greater value, a greater need that utilities have to bring called resilience. So we've made that more of a North Star as a company. That's true. It also happens to be a great growth engine. So, it's investment, and it grows the company and the asset base. So it's a good strategy to, provide that. I think where there is hesitancy behind it is the appetite of affordability. How much resilience or how much protection do you put out against the cost that it takes, and can people handle that? And that's an ongoing debate. But I think the industry, I think the utilities, I think customers have found that we want more resiliency in the systems. And I think now it's a matter of how we do that, pacing it in a way that takes the highest risks off the table first and does it in a way that is affordable for customers. There's a bit of packaging that has to go with how you put all that together to make an approver want to do that. And I think we all are, I'll call in various stages of trying to find the right, I'll call it secret sauce for that.
Thank you. Thanks.
But I don't look at resiliency as just being electric. We look at it in the wires, we look at it the gas, we look at it the generators, we look at it the people, we look at it at every aspect, the communications, the technology, the backup systems. I mean, these are all the things that are part of that, I'll call it collective, discussion.
Okay, well, thank you, panel. Tim, Tawnya, Eric, really, this was amazingly informative to share your openly, great example of what we do here at UBBA, being able to learn from our peers. Thank you to the utilities who are moving along the journey with Xcel, and to those utilities who are here trying to learn. Join us in our voyage of our collective efforts to solve these big challenges currently and those to come. So again, let's hear it for Xcel for hosting us. Thank you.